There's a lot to say on this subject, and I'm going to start with some opening statements. I'm here, my background is as a journalist, and I both, for not just the people on the panel here, but people in the room, my teams write about you, our company deals with you, from some of you good people we take money from you. We're a large media organisation, the internet arm of CBS Corporation. Some of the brands that I look after in the UK you might know are business brands like BNet, Silicon.com, ZDNet, which also cover technology clearly. And then on the more consumer side, huge technology brands like CNET and GameSpot, gaming title. That's my 30 seconds. So I'm going to ask each participant just to really tell us a little bit more about themselves, a brief opening statement. And my big question is, as we sit here and as we've heard a lot of what's been said today already, tell us what's really on your mind for 2010. What's a really big challenge for you in your organisation? So first of all, Mike.
So Mike Durbridge from Vodafone. Title pretty much says it all. So I look after online, retail and the call centres, both from a sales and marketing perspective. So I think the big challenge for me as we go forward into 2010 is how we actually effectively bring these channels together. I was very interested in the presentation that I saw earlier from Peter Fitzgerald in the room next door. Can't disagree with anything that he was saying. The challenge, I think, for us and many of us out in the audience will be how you do that and measure it and measure the interrelationships between online, offline, social media. How can you make all of those things work, not just in an online environment, but for you in your traditional channels like retail and call centres?
So I'm Toby Horry. I'm the joint MD at Dare, recently appointed, hence why it says there. I think it means more meetings so far. I think the big challenges as I see them are, first, that there is now too much media for consumers to consume. So they are having to make choices about which brands they interact with. And when I say brands, Charlie is a brand nowadays, and so you are competing with your brand with Charlie in terms of taking people's time and attention. So that's the first thing. I think the second thing which is impacting that is that a lot of clients that we work with, a lot of brands, still silo digital within their organisation, and I think that is a massive barrier to actually activating some of the opportunities that the world in which we live in now presents to us. So I think the more we can break down that siloing system, the better it's going to be.
Thanks.
Thanks. Carl Pring, I'm Head of Brand and Advertising at Sony UK. Wish I was so cool like. Been there 11 years now. Last year spent on the consumer side. Biggest challenge for us, I'd say, moving forwards is actually changing the way we actually engage with consumers. Sony traditionally has been, our philosophy has been, let's educate the consumers on what we do and how they should use what we sell. And obviously, we very, very quickly had to learn that, in fact, consumers decide themselves how they use our products. But trying to get an organisation as big as Sony to move and change direction is quite challenging. And our MD said, at the moment I feel like we're a big battleship ploughing through the ocean, and if we want to change direction it takes forever. I want to be a fleet of speedboats. So I said, well, at the moment, you know, we're far from it, but we're getting there. So hopefully, like I say, 2010 for us will mean, with our new restructure and everything, that we'll be in a position to hopefully react much quicker to consumer needs.
Great, thanks.
Hi, I'm Mick Hegarty. I'm Strategy and Commercial Director for BT Business, which is the arm of BT that looks after small and medium businesses. I'm actually a parent of teenagers, so they've left me in no doubt whatsoever that I am Mick not cool at all like. The strategy part of my job is obviously charting business strategy through a period of enormous change. Pretty much everything we do is changing. Our fundamental products and our offer is changing fundamentally. Our channels are changing, our competitors are changing. We're a fabric brand, but we've got to look at how we move our brand forward so that we remain relevant to customers. So every single thing we do is changing enormously, and it's changing for our customers. I'm also responsible for the commercial management of the business, which involves business development, working with new partners, and also a couple of things which are how we prioritise our investment and manage some of the commercial running of our business.
Great, thank you. So I have some specific questions for each panellist, and I have the same question for all of you as well. And I also want to leave some time at the end for some brief Q&A. But Toby, if I can come to you first on this, one thing that struck me when I saw the name of this session was it talks about in an online environment. And I think for most of us today, what we know is that really means a different environment online than we've had even 5 years ago, very much more interactive, Web 2.0. Earlier today, we've heard various people talking about both push and pull marketing, for example. So my question to you, Toby, as someone that deals with various clients in this space, can you give us just a bit of an inkling of what organisations get this? And I don't mean like big company, small company, but are there any examples you could give us?
Well, I think there's two theoretical points to answer that question. One is the brands that are getting it are the ones that realise that they need to focus on how they're going to get people to participate with them. And that can come in many different forms. I mean, one of the best examples of that is the Army. And they use different media, they use TV, they use press, they use posters, etc. But they always, everything they do is all about getting people to participate with them. So you've probably seen the documentary ads on TV, and at the end it has the little search bar that comes up and says, type in Start Thinking Soldier. You click that, you find it's got the top paid search, that takes you through to the game, and you can keep participating. So I think participation is the key for all these brands in terms of unlocking the opportunity they've got to provide. And so what was the other half of the question?
I have no idea.
Okay. It's not there.
No, it was the types of companies and who really gets
sorry, that was
it.
the other thing. So, and the other thing is that I think the old parlance was it's all about the big idea, and actually the brands that are really cracking this are ones that understand that it's not about the big idea anymore. It's about every single little thing they do. I mean, people talk about how do you measure success in the sort of digital world in which we live. It's almost the same as saying, how do you measure the effect of every member of your staff smiling when someone walks into the store? How do you put a value on that? But I think that's the way in which we've kind of got to think, because it's actually all the small things that brands do these days which add up to success, rather than focusing on one enormous effort.
Okay, Carl, can I specifically ask you about Sony a second? So Sony, very well known for Bravia televisions, and a lot of people here will know the campaigns which run across various media. You painted this picture of a bit of an oil tanker trying to turn, but as I understand it, the last campaign premiered on YouTube. And as an organisation, what kind of conversations happened internally to take that leap of faith, to use an expression from earlier?
Okay, I think it's fair to say it wasn't a pretty conversation. Yeah, it was certainly unique for us to go live online first on YouTube with the teaser trailer, but I think it's partly to almost complement what Toby was saying. It's important to, one, engage consumers very early on, but it's almost it's engaging them basically through intrigue. It's giving them a little taste, a little teaser. So not only did we premiere part of the Bravia campaign on YouTube, we also, for example, managed to secure one of Kasabian's tracks off their new album that hadn't yet been released. So that in itself managed to stimulate huge amounts of interest on YouTube as well, just from Kasabian fans. So it was about building up this consumer journey, rather than just kind of saying, right, here's the message, here's the TV, here's the offer, and this is where you go and find out about it. It's just being a lot more open to the fact that consumers now choose where they find information, how they use that information, and what they choose to do with it. You know, like I say, long gone are the days where we can say that we're going to educate or dictate or preach. It has to be engaging, it has to be entertaining, and it has to be consistent as well through all of our channels. So if we start on YouTube and then we go on TV and there's an online platform performing it, and people end up on sony.co.uk or in store, everything along that journey needs to be consistent with our message, with our brand, with our sales activity. So yeah, Bravia drone, which featured earlier in the year, was the first of that. But I'm pleased to say that there has been more and there will be more moving forward.
Okay, so developing this, I'm quite interested in where we'll be a few years from now. I asked you at the beginning about next year, but following this theme, so some really big organisations on this panel. If I can turn to Vodafone and Mike, first of all, given what you've learned, I mean, you guys have clearly a huge high street presence, do a lot of business online too. Where is the balance going to be? I mean, will we see fewer high street stores in the future? Will it just be more integrated? How do you sell 3 years from now?
So I think the key thing is, you know, does retail have a future? Absolutely it does. Retail's going nowhere. So I don't see the number of stores that we've got diminishing. I do see the size of our call centres diminishing, and I see the size of our online presence and online ability growing massively. But one of the key things to recognise, and I draw a parallel from where we were as a company a couple of years ago, and I'm sure there will be parallels in the audience, we used to have a retail team. Yeah, and get more, do it better, more efficient, and then a call centre team, more, better, efficient, and the same for online. And the retail team would know exactly about retail customers, and the call centre team would know, and the online team would know the same thing. The problem was we didn't really understand the customer at all. All we knew was about Vodafone and our channels and not about the customer. So you've got to flip the whole thing on its head and start thinking about the customer and how the customer wants to interact with you. And we know, and I'm sure this will be familiar to all of you as well, customers don't just consume one or shop in one channel or consume one media. They consume multiple media through multiple channels. And this is getting more and more complex as the days go on. So fundamentally for me, retail and online become symbiotic in a way that over the last couple of years, telesales, call centres and online have been quite symbiotic. I see that switch going more into online because the critical thing for me is about experience. And what you get in a retail store is a quite emotional experience. Online typically has been quite rational, and more the online space has to move into an emotional replication of what you would get in a retail store, and the two together will work in a symbiotic relationship.
Maybe we can get on to talk about how that's even possible. Earlier there were some comments about the tactile nature of buying certain things in the high street, for example. Mick, can I put the same question to you, though, about where this is going? And clearly you have an organisation with many touch points, but often with small businesses, for example.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, all the points have been made here. I think it's really, really important, the point about consistency and integrity in everything you do. So as a large incumbent brand, you know, the days are gone. We've seen this complete inversion of authority. So what you used to have was people used to listen to government or church or the BBC or large brands. Now they don't. It's actually almost completely inverted. What they look for is someone like me. So when we talk to small businesses, the most powerful recommendation for them is word of mouth. They look for someone who's in their vertical, typically in their geography, and somebody who's got the same kind of aptitudes for technology as they have. So what we've got to start to do is make sure that if we're going to communicate, we're starting almost from a cynical point of view with respect to fabric brands. And what we need to do is make sure that the way we communicate customers is completely consistent, whether it's face-to-face, whether it's in a call centre, whether it's online, and through all forms of different media.
I'm curious about this. I'm not a marketer, but I clearly understand that there are many touch points that you all have with end users of whatever product. And we talk about informational online, informational websites. Talk about PR. There's market research, loyalty programs. Who looks after this? Who does this roll up to? Is it a CMO or marketing role, or how do you get all this in a single voice?
I think it's tricky. I think one of the things we've wrestled with is to get people to understand the brand isn't the job of the marketing department. So the brand is almost the essence of the company and what it stands for with customers. So one of the things we've done when we launched one of our last campaigns was we didn't just focus on communications out to customers, and we didn't. What you typically do sometimes is you're going to have a big campaign. So you brief all the sales and marketing people. When you have a conversation with customers, they're going to ask you X, Y, Z. What we actually did was we actually focused on all the touch points within our business. Billing people, for example, field engineers, complaints people. And in the past, they might have seen they had a job to do. They didn't see themselves as part of the brand. But what we helped them see was that if they were dealing with a customer who had bad debt in a recession, they were actually a really important part of our brand to that customer who's in a difficult situation at the time. And it started to change the way they saw their roles.
How about the rest of you? Carl? Sony?
Yeah, it's difficult to not repeat everything we just heard, but for us, I mean, we've taken a few major steps, to be honest, in the last sort of 6 to 12 months to try and tackle these kind of things. And one big one for us, for example, jumping back to the bit about sales channels and getting everyone to fundamentally become an ambassador for the brand, was that very quickly was the need to recognise that people don't just buy in store or just buy online. In fact, it was all becoming very kind of mixed up. So being able to measure that was very difficult. So very recently, for example, we changed our online, Sony.co.uk, we changed our online site to pretty much bring sales, brand, marketing messages and help all together. So whether or not you needed to find out what was going on with digital switchover, or whether or not you actually wanted just to find out about a product, or you wanted to buy online delivery house, or buy online to choose to then collect from store, for example, is all suddenly in one place. Because we to echo what's already been said, we couldn't sort of suddenly say, right, this is this customer group here, this is how they behave, this is how they interact, therefore this is what we'll do. That kind of very linear process now is completely gone. And the fact that online now is so diverse we've had to change in that way as well. You know, working with our online communications, obviously, that Dare do for us, and the online media that we book, and you know, the messaging that we do. It's just changing and evolving the whole time. And like I say, that recent one with bringing everything together online on Sony UK is a massive, massive change for us. So we've got a whole new team in the organisation to actually facilitate that and constantly monitor it. So it's evolving all the time. You know, you just can't remain static anymore.
Okay.
I think the point is that everything is an ad these days. I mean, an ad in the terms of how I would historically have looked at it is a piece of 30-second film, or it's a press ad, or it's a poster. Every single thing you do as a brand now is an ad. And a couple of really good examples, Southwest Airlines in the States, there's a couple of videos out there with really funny demonstrations of the safety videos. So there's one with a guy doing a rap, and there's one with a guy, extremely camp guy, running through the beautiful nature of the life jacket, etc. And of course, that in the old world would have been viewed by the 100 people on that plane. That's now been captured on a mobile phone and posted on YouTube, and it's now been viewed by 3-4 million people. So every single thing that you do and every single thing that every representative of your brand does is now an ad, because if an ad is something that positively or negatively affects your perceptions of that brand, then every single thing is an ad these days, and that's how we have to think. And that really goes back to the points about not, going back to every single field engineer, etc. They are as much an ad for your business as that 30-second piece of film or that banner or that poster that you've made.
And there's huge upsides and downsides, aren't there?
Yeah, because it can work the other way around.
Another one,
yes.
A call centre call that goes wrong, or the people made videos about how their luggage has been treated and lost. So
I'd recommend the Zappos IM example. Just search for that. It's very, very amusing. So yes.
Okay.
So just one small point on that. If I'd kind of draw a parallel, whose responsibility is it? I think it's every single person in your organisation is responsible for the brand, the customer. Without doubt, every single person has a responsibility. The best parallel I can draw to this is about 9 months ago, we sat down as a leadership team in Vodafone and said, so what do our customers think of us? And a big market research piece was commissioned, and then they came in and presented a 400-page presentation about what customers think of us, and then we came away from that with loads of stats. And we kind of went, okay. I then went to a computer and went onto some blogs and just looked at what were customers saying about us. That is more powerful than any market research that you can get. So taking Toby's point from earlier, every single person in the UK is a representative of your brand, be that a good thing or a bad thing. So whatever customers are saying, that is your brand. The best description of your brand that I've heard is, it's what people say about you when you're not in the room. And that is every single customer in the UK. So particularly in terms of this multiple use of media, you have to address how customers feel about you, not just what you say to customers.
So Mike, to pick up and stay on Vodafone, to pick up on the idea of looking at what people are saying about you online, how do you do that well? How do you do it in such a way that you're not preaching, you're not looking naff, you're not feeling like you're lurking in the corner? How do you do that well as a company?
It's a really fine balance, because I think I'd be surprised if every single person in the room now hasn't got some sort of we're customer-centric as an organisation, and the customer's at the heart of what we do. It's very difficult to take that word and turn it into action and say what you do. One of the dangers with the blogs is they are a kind of an unmoderated, completely open environment. It's what people say about you when you're not in the room. To then go in and try and moderate those almost tarnishes you more as a brand. So what we're very careful to do is those that are very negative advocates, if that's such a thing, but I think you get what I mean. We will speak to those people individually and say, tell us about the problems that you've been having, what can we do to help you? And then feed that back into our business to find out what do we need to change to make ourselves better as an organisation so nobody else has to go through that pain. We also then use tools like Buzz Monitor, etc., that actually monitors conversations that are going on the web, that gives us a feel for good, bad, what do we need to do differently.
Okay.
And there's lots of good examples of brands who have been attacked online, but the way they have dealt with that attack has actually put them into a more positive light. So it's actually turning a complete disaster into something that actually really served them very well. I mean, I think actually the best thing to happen to McDonald's in the last 10 years was Super Size Me, because actually it made them sit up and take notice of the sort of undercurrent of angst and hate that was sort of building up, and made them address it head on and led to make up your own mind and all those sorts of initiatives. So actually, whilst at the time it was like, oh my God, this is going to be the end of this, they turned that into something which really affected change and turned it into a positive.
Only getting a documentary, even a low-budget film off the ground is not easy. Getting a blog off the ground 1,000 times over is clearly pretty easy. How about the rest of you guys? How do you with big brands that people know, how do you engage well?
Well, I think, to be honest, we used to play the game of who shouts loudest, which today just clearly doesn't work because there's just far too many different channels of communication now. So for us, in order to stand out, it's about engagement and it's about entertainment. It's about bringing basically our brand philosophy to life to the consumers, but in a way it's real. It's got to be trustworthy and real. You know, it's amazing. I was chatting to Charlie in the room before coming in. I was saying it's amazing how we go online now and we listen to the reviews and the opinions of complete strangers on the other side of the world, and we take it as gospel. But you won't believe it from a manufacturer, you know. But
if someone's got it wrong, someone mentioned earlier people looking at manufacturer sites for product details. Now, I completely see that from where I am. But if someone goes in and says something incorrect, you're probably not going to let it lie. If it's very important, then it's just a false statement. How do you then step into that?
I've got a fantastic example there, actually. Before I was on the consumer side, I used to work in our broadcast and B2B division. And there was a very influential site called the Guild of Television Cameramen, and there was one guy on there who he hated Sony. It was because I think at the time we had probably, I think it was about 90% market share. There wasn't really much competition in the broadcast world, but so he despised us for that. And every time we brought out a new product, he would just tear it apart with a lot of technical inaccuracies, which obviously made our engineers scream. And I was forever getting mails from the guys in Tokyo saying, "Who is this guy? Hunt him down and kill him," you know. And I was
kill him.
So instead, I turned that around and used a different Japanese philosophy. Well, instead, let's study him instead. So we watched this guy really closely, and we ended up actually taking him out to Atsugi. We actually take him out to the factory to sit down with the engineering team, which make these cameras. And they literally sat with him and they said, what's the problem? And he kind of said, well, I just wish it did this, and I just wish, the shoulder was a bit more balanced with the camera. And it was kind of like, well, why didn't you just say that? So they actually built a new range of broadcast camera, which back at the time was quite revolutionary. It was using disc and everything, which sounds ridiculous now, but back then that was amazing. And next thing you know, he was the Guild of Television Cameraman's ambassador for Sony. So yes, we could have hunted him down and killed him, but instead by actually, instead of listening to him and trying to understand, what information he wanted and how he wanted to receive that and how that would benefit him, we turned it into a hugely, positive situation, and had a lot of fun on the way. But
okay,
and likewise, I think there's a couple of fundamentals. I think there's openness, there's integrity, and I think there's then engagement. And I think, for your business, and particularly for large businesses and large established businesses who've been around for a while, it's quite a journey for people to go on. So you start off by not knowing what your customers are saying about you. Well, that's not a great thing. Secondly, you become aware about it, but you don't do much about it. At least you know what people are saying in blogs and forums, but you're not being active. Then you start to get active, and typically people try and do it in a sort of traditional corporate way, and that really goes wrong. So you make a few mistakes, but you learn from others. I won't name the brand, but anyone that saw the brand who had a slightly over-enthusiastic agency and used the hashtag Iran elections for their promotional pictures on Twitter. It just, I've seen a few howls in my day, and I'm glad that wasn't my one. So you learn from others' mistakes, and then you just say, okay, we have to become part of the conversation. We have to open ourselves up, and you hear a lot of things that are difficult to hear. Okay. But as a couple of people have said, there's particularly around service and service experiences, the ability to change a bad event and perception into something really good is really powerful. We use Twitter quite a lot now to pick up people who are very frustrated around some of our service experiences. And sometimes you can't change people's frustration. Typically, you can at least correct that incident. But what's really most rewarding is quite often you can turn someone from being a kind of negative advocate to being a positive advocate. And actually we've seen some really significant revenues and business coming from people who previously had a very negative experience, because the way we reacted and you know, treated them as a human who had a real frustration, turned them into a real kind of passionate customer and advocate.
Okay, so I have one separate area I still want to cover off, which is around the whole idea of research and insights. And we heard earlier, I think Simon from Nokia talked about the focus group of however many, you know, 1 billion people online. Learning from people in real time sounds like nirvana, right? Anyone can do this. Must be solve all problems. Clearly, it's not very easy. How do all of you go about addressing this? Like, if I can come to you three first, maybe Mike.
Yeah, so it's difficult because what you will get is so many individual kind of queries, etc., that come through. What we've built is an aggregation tool. So each of those queries, complaints, faults will be categorized. When that gets above a certain number, then we need to start looking at that's a problem that needs addressing.
How quickly can you react to that kind of
within hours.
Okay.
So as soon as it hits a flag goes up, we then have to do something about it, and then there's a small team that's responsible for what do we need to do, who do we need to engage, and how quickly can we make this happen. And I think that's the biggest change for our business over the last year, is taking the customer and making them part of your business. And the second thing is actually reducing the amount of levels and structure between the customer and actually getting things done. And it's almost seamless that customer identifies an issue, you're able to do something about it. If you can't do that, then the frustration just grows, expands, and becomes almost unmanageable.
Okay, so you two guys at the end, in terms of reacting to data flows and what you see happening, Mick first?
Well, I think we're probably still fairly new at this, and sort of reacting real time is challenging, but we're finding it very powerful. I mean, I'll give you an example from literally last week. A very big thing for BT Business and the BT Group is the rollout of fibre. We're piloting it now, and we've got a big push from the new year. We think it's very transformative for the kind of for the industry. And the classic question, well, what are we going to call it? You know, so how do you name it? So we had the kind of UK MD, the UK CEO, had a session last week. My boss is the business MD. They sit down to talk about the naming of the product, and of course there's the classical, well, we've got some ideas from the marketing department and the agencies have suggested some stuff. My boss actually went in with what customers were looking for on Google. So we basically said, look, you know, customers know fibre's coming. There are some competitors who've got products out there today. Let's look at the kind of terms we think that might be asked for and group them in different ways, and look and see which are being the most searched for terms. And it was different to what we expected.
You're not going to tell us what they are you?
Mutt's nuts broad to the band. It wasn't what we'd expected, but that's what
Do it.
the crowd said. You can't argue with the crowd, so. But we'll see. But it's and there's only a voice. I mean, again, you have to then condition it with, because you know, customers don't necessarily know everything. When the mobiles were invented, nobody knew that SMS would be a fantastic thing for customers as an engineering tool. Likewise, when you know people came up with the World Wide Web, nobody thought about Facebook or Twitter or what have you. So there's another angle, which is understanding where your business is going and what's possible, but being able to tap into, you know, this really fast and dynamic and huge population is incredible.
Okay, and Cole, how does Sony address this?
Yeah, I think, to be honest, we struggle with it. You know, I won't hide behind anything here. I think data is a difficult one, because whatever data we're presented with, there's always some other data that contradicts it. And needless to say, our MD as well is often kind of, I'm not interested in that data, this is what I like and that's how I want to see it. So, you know, we've got the internal kind of battle as well. That said, you know, we are starting to expand our knowledge in this area. We are using a lot of customer metrics and customer segmentation to analyse quite critically what we're doing, why we're doing it, how we're doing it, and how in theory it's going to be perceived and bought into by the consumer.
Is this around things like service that you could react to quickly, or does it tend to be more on the product side, whereas with the Sony, the cameraman using Sony products,
Sure,
it might take months or years?
I'm sure it's happening in the service side, but I'm not savvy to it, to be honest. But it's certainly happening a lot on the product side. Like I say, we've completely changed direction with the way we communicate product messages now. As a result of all, you know, the sort of myriad of data that's coming in, to the point of where we've got a dedicated team now looking at it day in, day out. And for the first time ever, I think it was last week or the week before, we actually had some customer focus groups come into the building to sit down with our product managers to tell them what they thought of these new products that they're proposing to launch next year. And it was just amazing. The product managers going, oh, it's got 1,000 pixels and 5 HDMI inputs, and the customer told us, yeah, but does it come in pink? And it's kind of like, what? So just seeing the huge gap between, where we believe we should be going compared to where the consumer actually wants us to go. Okay. Without that data, we will be a long way off. But that's what 2010 is going to be all about for us.
Okay, Toby?
I was just going to say, I think the biggest issue with research is that often it can exist in a vacuum. And I think you have to start with what you're trying to achieve and what you want to do. And if you buy my point about brands being more about the smaller things that they do, then I think you need to think very carefully about the research that you use. I think when research falls down is when you sit in a room and you've basically got hundreds of charts and decks, and it just becomes completely unmanageable, a tidal wave of research and data that you can't do anything with. But if you've already identified some of the smaller things that you want to do, it becomes much easier to then carve that research into the stuff that's actually useful to you. So I'd say sort of think small rather than think big.
Okay, so thank you guys. I think we've probably got time for a couple of quick questions. So hand right here.
Hi, it's Hannah from Bank Corporation. We talked about integrated sales and marketing often in two different silos. So existing customer, integrate sales and marketing to that via a number of channels. It could be online, retail, whatever that might be. When we talk about advertising, integrated advertising and marketing in separate silo. Have you managed to link the two together and have an integrated sales and marketing program for existing customers that links to your advertising campaign, so you can identify people that are existing customers of yours, you can cross-sell, upsell, or completely new customers?
Did everyone hear that? Did we get? It's a tough one to repeat.
Everything you call
So could you paraphrase? So about two different silos in terms
Yes.
of existing customers and new customers and integrated sales and marketing.
Exactly.
Right?
So existing customers, you're integrating your sales and marketing within your online retail, your tele-services solutions, etc. So your existing customer service there is integrated. Then separately, your advertising can be integrated through different media channels, through paid for and earned media. But have you been able to actually match the two together, and who would be able to do that in an organization where you perhaps link your CRM data to your advertising data and identify specific messages for existing versus new customers?
Okay, thanks.
I'll take that one if
Yeah,
you will.
please.
So the short answer would be yes.
Next question.
A slightly more informative answer might be you market to customers. You don't market to new customers, and you don't market to existing customers. You market to customers. What you do when those customers come through your door is very different. So I think the point you made is really valid. So particularly people that come into our retail store that are existing customers will get a different treatment to those that are new customers. And those that come through the online site and through the call centre, again, will get very different treatments and different offers, upsell, cross-sell, differently than new customers. So I think your point's absolutely right. You have to be able to do it. The challenge is technically, at what point can you identify are they an existing customer or not to be able to do something differently? And that's probably one of the challenges that we are still facing, and I'm sure many organisations will face as well.
I think it's a hugely transformative capability if you can do it, because there's this traditional sales and marketing will never speak, and I think if you look on the web, there's a very good presentation on why sales and marketing people like cats and dogs will never get on. And I think actually today's businesses are about successfully aligning sales and marketing, and the third arm is service. I mean, I think there's a lot you can do with data. So, one of the things we do is we use tools like Genius from genius.com, so that when we send out any emails, we don't just see open rates and bounce rates, but we observe customers' behaviour when they come back on and then call into a call centre, so that the agent knows that the customer has received a piece of email, possibly about, say, broadband, but actually when they've come to the website, they've seen something else that's taken them off to look at mobile, and actually that's the real thing they're interested in. So it allows the salespeople to have insight into the customer's response to advertising, and a bit of insight into where their interest lies. And so the range of tools that are able to allow you to do that are huge. There is a cultural and a management issue about, making those different functions work together smoothly.
Let me just look for one more question. Do I see a hand? Yep, right at the back.
You talk a lot about
Anyone?
So I'll start on that one. It's and I'll be more informative than my start answer last time. So I personally, and this is a personal belief, I think if you're only going to measure one thing in your company, it will be NPS. If you have the belief, and there are many studies out there that back this up, that if you improve your NPS, you improve your revenue, you improve your retention, you improve your EBITDA, your profit. It's a bit of a leap of faith. Mm-hmm. But if there's one thing that I want to be successful at, it's NPS, because I know that all the other metrics will follow as soon as you crack the NPS bit.
And exactly the same. And again, I think to some extent it's a journey. So what we've done in the past is we started off by measuring process measures because they're quite easy to measure. So you say, okay, what's the successful completion of, customer experience process X, Y, or Z. Then you move to customer satisfaction, which is an external measure. And the thing we are now focused on as our number one measure is advocacy, because that's the really critical thing that says what customers think. And I actually really agree with Mike. From our perspective, in the long run, we think there's only two real differentiators we have, which is customer experience and customer insight. We are a retail business in BT Business. Most of the products that we sell are widely distributed, and people have a very wide range of choices on where they get them. The only thing that really differentiates in the long term is experience and what you know about your customers. So advocacy is critical.
Okay, we could go a lot further into that subject, but I think we're at time. So I think all that's left to do is to say, please help me thank to Mike, Toby, Carl and Nick. Thanks.